On March 14, 2001, members of the Phoenix Fire Department responded to a call for help. Initially, it was a routine incident, a debris fire on the exterior of a business. When it was all over, the incident was anything but routine. A Phoenix firefighter lost his life in that fire, and the lives of those who were on the scene that day remain changed forever.
March 14th for the fire department was probably one of the worst days that you can have. Before that, it had been probably 20 years since we had lost somebody in an actual structure fire. Brett was a member of Engine 14, and he was going to 35th Avenue in McDowell to see if anybody was in the building and control a fire. And unfortunately, Brett never had the opportunity to come home.
An arsonist set the fire at the back of the Southwest Supermarket at 35th Avenue and McDowell Road at about 5 in the afternoon. Engine companies arrived and knocked the fire down. They put out the fire they could see. Unfortunate wind conditions pushed the fire inside the building through an open doorway, and it made its way into what the construction industry and the fire service call concealed spaces, spaces inside walls and ceilings that can't be seen, but can allow fire to travel and burn undetected. When more fire units arrived, they proceeded to evacuate the buildings and look for more fire.
Very little smoke when Engine 14 first went in there. They got it all clear. Where, that means that they saw that nobody was in the building within 30 seconds. So you could see that they went right down each row, and they could see all the way to the back of the grocery store.
By the time the fire showed itself again, it had grown. The fire had spread in those concealed spaces across the span of the roof of the 27,000 square foot supermarket. Firefighters inside the store found visible fire in a storage room to the rear and were fighting to put it out, but didn't know how bad the fire was above them. Firefighter Brett Tarver from Engine 14 was inside the burning building with the rest of his 4-person crew, trying to get control of the fire, when he realized he was running low on air. The captain of his crew ordered them all to leave the building together immediately. Brett Tarver started toward the exit in the zero visibility conditions. He never came out. Minutes later, Brett declared a mayday over the fire department radio system. It is a very rarely used and very serious term used by a firefighter in distress. He said he was out of air and breathing smoke. He couldn't find his way out. A rapid intervention rescue team was sent into the burning building to rescue firefighter Tarver. The conditions inside were horrible.
By the time we started to enter, I would say about 2 feet inside the door, it was just total blackness. You couldn't see anything.
The contents of the store shelves had toppled to the ground. The heat from the flames was intense, and the smoke was blinding.
2 feet inside the door, I can't see a thing. And supermarkets all are different. They've got counters and customer service booths and produce aisles with things in the middle of those. So I really didn't know exactly how it was laid out. I didn't know if I was going down aisles or if I was going against the aisles. So the hose line is all I had to go on.
The fire hose can help lead a rescue team to a downed firefighter. And equally important, it will lead the rescuers out of the building to safety.
Never leave it. Don't ever, not even for a second, leave it. You could put your hands off that hose line. You follow that hose line all the way in, especially in those conditions, in that big of an occupancy.
It would be at least stretching the truth if I were to say that day our emotions weren't strapped, weren't stressed to the max. I've been on fire grounds where people have gotten lost before. I've been on fire grounds where firefighters have gotten in trouble. I have never been on a firefighter or on a fire ground where we've had a firefighter in trouble and we send firefighters in to help that firefighter and they get in trouble. That was a unique experience for us.
The rescue effort was nothing short of heroic. Many fellow firefighters risked their lives to save him, their co-worker, and their friend. Brett Tarver was removed from the burning building and taken to a hospital. Life-saving efforts at the scene and the hospital were unsuccessful. The Phoenix Fire Department had lost one of its own. What happened next was something appropriately called recovery. The department wanted to know as much as it could about the incident in order to prevent anything like it from happening again. It launched an investigation, and it held a mirror in front of itself to see what, if anything, needed to be changed to protect the lives of its people. And its philosophy is to make any tragic loss of this kind the last. And the way to do that is to learn from the experience.
The next morning, the senior staff, and specifically Chief Brunacini, went to the site. We had to break the fire chief's heart by telling him this is where we lost one of our own. He made a decision that we would take all of our crews through that fire within the next 3 days. That was done. Every member of the Phoenix Fire Department, as well as surrounding cities, went through that building within the next 3 days. We began to recreate what had happened.
Nothing was hidden about the incident. The public heard the details, Brett's family heard the details, and the firefighters who were and were not working that day heard the details. And most importantly, the firefighters who were there were heard by the people doing the investigation. More than 100 interviews were conducted with those who had firsthand knowledge about the incident. It was truly an open book. As the information was gathered, it became clear that changes needed to be made. It was estimated that 95% of the firefighting practices done on March 14th were correct. Yet 5% of the way the Phoenix Fire Department does business on a commercial structure fire needed to change.
The systems that we had, for example, at Southwest Supermarkets have served us, and probably saved us too, very well in the past. It's just that things change. You learn things. In other words, we can't keep the world, you can't keep the world still. It's going to change. And what causes organizations to become sort of dull and then mediocre and then obsolete and then ineffective is that they stop looking outside the system and they stop saying, how do we match what's going on today and not throw the baby out with the bath. And I think the spirit that we have throughout the whole fire department is let's try it. We try something and it works, we keep doing it. If it doesn't work, we try something else. We go back to what worked before. I mean, it's really not very complicated.
What the department learned is that it needed to spend more time doing drills in real buildings that more closely simulate the hazards of large commercial structures. Fortunately for the citizens, the department's members don't get many opportunities to fight fires in large buildings. They get a lot of opportunities to attack fires in homes and other small structures, but the firefighting tactics can be vastly different from a bowling alley or a movie theater. Buildings in Phoenix that were scheduled for demolition were found and leased for the special training. The scenarios were the same at each location: to rescue lost firefighters who were low on air.
Inch 1 on the scene of a medium-sized structure with a working fire on the east side. Inch 1 is laying a line to the east, taking a hand line in for search and rescue and fire attack. Inch 1 is assuming command and offensive strategy.
2 firefighters were placed inside the buildings. One was conscious and the other was not. They called a mayday on the radio saying they were lost inside the burning building.
What's your location?
Our burner's down. I can't burn it down. We're both laying here and we're lost.
A rescue crew outside was immediately mobilized and sent in to find the lost firefighters. Over the course of the year following the 35th Avenue incident, more than 200 drills were conducted. Firefighters from fire departments all over the valley participated. Firefighters who experienced the drill now completely understood how difficult it was to get Brett Tarver out of that supermarket.
I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, you know, I really know now what you went through. It was dark. On the drills, we actually blacked out their masks, and we made it really tough. They had to go up over a lot of items, use the rescue loops, you know, stay on the hose lines. And I think we all realize now what a difficult job it's going to be if one of us gets lost.
We always thought in the past that there was safety in twos, that if you sent 2 people in together, that one of them would always be able to take care of the other one. That's not true.
I hear a pass to the back this way. Say again, Jimmy? I hear a pass to the back this way. Okay, well, all right, let me get Tim one and we'll go that way.
It was a storage room in a grocery store that all the product had fallen on the floor. We had to lift a 300-pound man, or 260 pounds plus his gear, up off the ground and carry him out, and that just didn't happen. It really takes about 12, we found out it takes about 12 firefighters to rescue every one firefighter that's down.
I think that we've, through our training, have more or less proven that the old school of thought that if you and I go into a building together and you go down, that I can pull you out. That simply is not true. And as far as I know, that has never been written before March 14th.
You have Doug out, he's headed to treatment, and you have located Rivera and your package him up right now.
It's a really interesting phenomenon that firefighters will, when everybody's running out of a burning building, firefighters are running in. Well, that's the kind of people we hire, and that's what we train them to do. I mean, that's the gist of what we're about, is going into burning buildings and hostile environment. So now you already know that that's the kind of people you're dealing with. Now take basically in the camaraderie and the family of our unit, of our firefighters group here in Phoenix, and we say one of our brothers or sisters is down in that building. Well, you're going to have a hell of a time keeping people out of there, because everybody's willing to go in and lay down their life to get that person, that other firefighter, if you will.
It's not acceptable to die on a fire. A lot of people think that, you know, that's the heroics of the job and all that stuff, and that's not true. It's not acceptable. I didn't come on this job to die on the job. I want to retire. I want to be just like any other citizen out there that, you know, enjoys his retirement. We risk our lives, you know, to save lives, but we don't risk it all to save property or something that's already dead. Brett was talking on the radio. I'm going to do everything that I can to get him out of there. And I feel personally that I did everything I could to get him out. It just didn't happen. But it's not acceptable to die on the job, no.
We've really taken a real hard look at what we call a mayday, is when a firefighter is down or a firefighter's in trouble on the fire ground. We've taken a real hard look at what that mayday does to the fire ground itself. That's a big issue, and it's a hard one to deal with, because you're dealing with people. You're dealing with basically, you're dealing with family members. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of training to not let your emotions take over. If there's a more stressful, more emotionally draining experience than to deal with a lost, trapped, or down firefighter, and one who particularly loses his life on the fire ground, I don't know what it is.
Good lessons have come from the fire. Firefighters have gotten a renewed respect for having a round-trip ticket when they enter a building. They know how critical time is. They take air in with them on their backs, but when that air bottle runs out, the human instinct is to breathe, no matter how bad the air is on the other side of their mask. The smoke is a killer.
Once your bottle is empty, and you have a face mask on and it sucks to your face, that's the worst feeling in the world. I mean, you know you can't get any more air out of that bottle. It's like when you're underneath water, and that's the best I can describe it. And you know, and you're out of breath, and you're going to the surface of a pool even, and you're panicking a little bit, and that's the feeling you get.
Let's see what we got for air.
The drills helped drive home the seriousness of running out of air. Another lesson, the unique value of special cameras called thermal imaging cameras. The cameras actually detect differences in heat in front of their lenses, so rescuers can see victims through blinding smoke. Without the cameras, searching has to be done by touch.
Had we had the thermal imaging camera that day, that 20 or 25 minutes to find a fire that's extended into a hidden spot or a hidden space into a large commercial building, if we'd have had crews in with thermal imaging cameras, we would have been able to identify where that fire was earlier.
So many lessons were learned and shared among the firefighting community, and the impact of Brett Tarver's death is being felt far away from the intersection of McDowell Road and 35th Avenue in Phoenix.
What I want to take away from it, you know, Brett died, but Brett died and he's going to kind of help us out. I mean, we're now more aware of what we need to do when a firefighter calls a mayday, and I think that's all come from Brett, and that's what Brett's giving back to us right now.
If you look at what firefighters do, we had better always operate with a big dose of humility. Is that what we're doing is we're taking on nature. Nature wanted that building to burn down, and it did. And they call them natural laws. They don't call them natural suggestions. And what you're doing is you're getting in front of a natural law when you go into a fire. That's a pretty difficult position to put a human being in. Well, we do it all the time. We have exceptional human beings. We have, I think, a terrific system. We're in a great city that provides good resources to us. I think we connect with each other very well, but when it's all said and done, Mother Nature could care less about that. She's in that building and it's burning, and it's just chemistry and physics. And the only thing that understands is water.
After a lot of hard work and thoughtful preparation, a detailed report was compiled in less than a year of the 35th Avenue fire. It not only tells what happened, but explains how the Phoenix Fire Department has been changed forever by the event.
Brett shouldn't die in vain on this. In other words, we ought to be better for the experience, as tragic as it was, losing a member of your family. But I think Brett's death will save a lot of firefighters' lives, not only here, but probably across the country.
It is dedicated to the memory of firefighter Brett Tarver and is available to the fire service for the asking.
So I went on and got me a job at Swenson's Ice Cream. For those of you who have listened to me talk over the last 25 years, that was my first big boy job. Sweeping floors at Swenson's Ice Cream. Started off one Saturday, got hired, worked 10 hours that day. My dad called me at the end of the day, "Where you been, son?" "Dad, I got me a job. I'm sweeping floors at Swenson's Ice Cream." "Come on downstairs, son. Let me show you the best way to sweep a floor." Everything's a system. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's always a better way. There's always a best way. 2 weeks into it, Swenson said, "You're a very diligent young man. I want to make you a scooper today." Oh, a scooper. "Let me show you how to scoop ice cream." Truth be known, I'd already been practicing. Yep. And eating the evidence, you know. But he had a system for scooping ice cream. When the customer places an order to withdraw the scooper from the scooper well, the water in the well must be running all the time. Gordy, understood? Yes, sir. Tap it off on a clean cloth, cloth replaced every 15 minutes. Approach the product the customer desires, never press down on ice cream. You're pressing out quality. Scoop around, deliver the product, make the change, wash your hands, and then approach the next customer. That was Swenson's system on scooping ice cream. I'll give you a hint, if he caught you deviating from the system. If he caught you waiting on a customer without washing your hands first, you got fired. Not back to sweeper, you got fired. Stop by your local today, walk in. They don't have dedicated sweepers anymore. They got one kid standing behind the counter, they're sweeping floors. You come walking in. "Can I help you?" No. 10 years ago, I'd have the two kids in the truck. "Who in this truck wants an ice cream cone?" "Yay, Daddy, we love ice cream." 10 years later, "Who in this truck wants an ice cream cone?" "You go in first, Dad, because there's a high probability they're going to piss you off, and we won't be eating here anyhow." Whenever I look at something going bad, I ask, were there systems in place? Were they up to date? Were they being implemented? Systems. Systems. This all leads up to this whole concept of making decisions on high consequence, low probability events, or what I like to call high risk, low frequency. Why is this so critical? Why is this so critical to you in the fire service? This is important stuff. Important stuff. And if you're fading in and fading out of the lecture, fade in here for a second. It works. I'll do it this way. I'll do what I want to do. Here's your fire department. Not to scale. Fire department's got all sorts of different divisions and bureaus and units, and every division, bureau, and unit's a series of separate and distinct. Oh, what the hell? Oh, okay, screw with the cop, huh? Don't think I ain't got reciprocity with Arizona DPS. You get out of here. Beep, 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 beep. Whoa, there we go. There's your job description. There's the fire department, there's the unit you're in, there's your job description. And every job description is a series of separate and distinct incidents. Things we do. Things we do. And boy, I'm telling you, your job is complex. This ain't making ice cream where there's 10 things to do, or selling commercial real estate where there's 100 things to do, or working at Nordstrom where there's 1,000 things to do. Your job is complex. Hundreds of thousands of different things that we have to be able to do, that you have to be able to do, all with one singular goal. Whatever you're doing, get it done right. Doing things right. If you're driving a truck, do it right. If you're backing a truck up, do it right. If you're fighting a fire, do it right. If you're giving EMS services, do it right. If you're doing a performance evaluation, do it right, do it right, do it right. When we do things right, ladies and gentlemen, and we throw in a little bit of common sense, we got personnel safety. We throw in a little bit of incident documentation, we got the elimination of liability. We throw in a little bit of dignity and respect, we got customer service. Doing things right's the key. And the good news for you is most of what you do ends up going right. Did you ever think about that? Most of what you do, in spite of the extremely complex nature of your job, you end up doing right. My hat's off to you, ladies and gentlemen. In spite of the complex nature of the job, most of what you do right. There's a reason why. Every one of these incidents that you get involved in can be put into one of these 4 boxes. You know, this is important stuff. This is the classic risk frequency analysis. Risk and frequency. By the end of my little talk here today, I want this prominent in your mind. Some things you do in the fire service are what I call high-risk events. Definition: if they don't go right, the consequences in civil court, personal injury, organizational embarrassment are high. Some of what you do are called low-risk events. Definition: if it goes bad, the consequences are low. Some things you do a lot, high frequency. Some things you do rarely, low frequency. The risk frequency analysis. Firefighters get in trouble for 2 things, folks. Intentional misconduct, that happens, but it's rare. Most of what gets us in trouble, gets you in trouble, are mistakes. Study the consequences. Study the consequences. Mistakes happen. Where do mistakes happen? Very rarely do you end up in trouble on high-frequency events. High-frequency events, things you do all the time, generally don't cause you problems. Why? Because of a wonderful tool known as RPDM, Recognition Prime Decision Making. Recognition Prime Decision Making. And you can read all the books out there that are on neuro-linguistic programming, and my doctor friends out here in the audience hopefully will be able to back me up on this. But there's all sorts of studies about how do we think things through, and a lot of these were done back in the 50s and 60s, and a lot of these studies involve fire departments. And they came up with this concept of RPDM, Recognition Prime Decision Making. Your brain is this massive hard drive loaded with information, billions of gigabytes of data stored in this massive hard drive, and when you get involved in any incident, the brain scans it, beep, 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 looks for a match in the already existing hard drive, finds the match, and automatically directs behavior based on past behavior that ended up with a successful result. That's RPDM. It works. It works. When mistakes occur, folks, they're over here on the low frequency events. And I'm not worried about these, the low risk, low frequency events, because even if they go bad, the consequences are relatively small. Where I get all worked up, folks, where I get all worked up, and where I want you to be getting worked up, as a mom, as a dad, as a chief, as a firefighter, as a union leader, I don't care who you are. Where I want you getting worked up is right here. High risk, low frequency events. High consequence, low probability events. These are the ones that historically and probability-wise have the highest likelihood of ending up downstream in nasty consequences. High risk, low frequency events. It's how JFK Jr. died. Flying at night in the fog with 170 hours of flight time, high risk, low frequency. It's how Boulder PD screwed up the JonBenet Ramsey case. Bad cops? Hell no, those are good cops up there. They got involved in an incident called a child homicide. High risk, low frequency. Who dies fighting wildland fires? Take a look at the numbers, folks. Statistically, probability-wise, you would think that career wildland firefighters, who represent most of the people on the fire ground, would end up being the high numbers. No. It's the municipals, the seasonals, and the volunteers. Bad people? Nope. Good people. Low frequency. Low frequency. And by the way, if the United States Forest Service came to downtown Phoenix to fight a high-rise fire, would they end up getting hurt? Why? Bad people? No. Good people. High risk, low frequency. Every place I go, people are bad-mouthing Seattle PD. Every place I go, people are bad-mouthing Seattle. Gordy, is Seattle PD the most screwed-up police department in the whole world? No, they're pretty good. Gordy, they butchered the WTO riots. That's because their idiot mayor was not looking at riots through one of these 4 boxes. Riots for Seattle are right here. High risk, low frequency. That's why they got their ass kicked. High risk, low frequency. At the end of the riots, they had this little anorexic anarchist from PETA waving his little PETA flag around. Yeah, we just kicked Seattle PD's ass, and now we're coming to LA in August for the Democratic National Convention, and we're going to kick LAPD's ass too. Riots for LAPD are high risk, but they're also high frequency. They started a dozen in the last 2 years. They know how to do that. It's all risk and frequency. When you get involved in something like this up here, please, I want you to get this chart indelibly imprinted over your left eye, just like this. And when you're playing on the high frequency side, no worries. When you're on the low risk side, no worries. High frequency, no worries. Low risk, no worries. When your eye gets stuck up here, beep, 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 high risk, low frequency, I want the bells of St. Mary going off in your head. This is the incident that's got the highest probability of causing you grief. Why? Because your hard drive is empty, ladies and gentlemen. It's high risk, low frequency. I practice what I preach. I got off an airplane in December back in Denver. Where's my flight to Grand Junction? Sorry, Mr. Graham, all flights to Grand Junction have been canceled. Severe weather in the area. Severe weather, 0-0 visibility, icing conditions. We see you're a frequent flyer with United. Here's a Hertz rental car voucher. You can drive there. High risk, low frequency. What do I look stupid to you? Hello? My boy and I are buying a new boat. Mrs. Graham doesn't know that right now, so keep it secret. But our dream is to fly up to Washington State next year, go out the Strait of Juan de Fuca in our new boat, make a left-hand turn and come right down the Pacific coast. My boy is 11 years old now. He's already figured it out. Hey, Dad. Yes, son. Driving a boat down the Pacific coast, isn't that one of them high-risk, low-frequency events you speak of? Good for you, son. And it is high risk. It is high risk. Take a look at some of the places on the map, right on the coast. Point doom, point death, point you're gonna die, point 15,000 boats have sunk here already. Do you feel lucky, punk? Well, do you? Point if you got this far, you're one lucky SOB. You know, I said, very good, Jakey. That is a high-risk, low-frequency event. But there's 2 types of high-risk, low-frequency events. The DTs and the NDTs. Time to think it through and no time to think it through. These are the ones that scare the hell out of me, folks. Right here. What I like to call the HR, LF, NDTs. Tasks that are very risky, done very rarely, with no time to think it through. And the bad news for us in public safety in general, and you in the fire service in particular, is that we have a number of these HR, LF, NDTs. High risk, low frequency, no time to think it through. Let me give you some classic risk management, ladies and gentlemen. If you study consequences, these can be identified through a study of consequences. And once these high-risk, low-frequency, non-discretionary time tasks have been identified, they can be addressed through a serious training program. A serious training program that focuses every day on HRLF NDTs, where every day is a training day. What will we do if this happens? What will we do if this happens? High risk, low frequency, non-discretionary time tasks. These scare the hell out of me, folks. The good news for you is most high risk, low frequency tasks have total, absolute 100% discretionary time. Most of the high-risk, low-frequency events that you will ever get involved in, not all, but most of them, there is time to think them through. Time to think them through. This is the most valuable information I can give you, ladies and gentlemen. You have time on a task, slow down. Slow down. Slow down. I was watching you eat the donuts out in front. I make a study of this. I watch people eating breakfast. Here is a doctor, and you know who you are because I saw your little doctor badge on. Eating a muffin. They pick it up, they look at it, and they put it back. Here's a realtor eating a muffin. They pick it up, they take a bite, they chew it 13 times. You know, here's an engineer eating a muffin. They pick it up, they look at it, they study it, and then they put it back. Here's a cop eating a muffin. Here's a firefighter. And then they pack up 14 more and take back to the station with them. Why are you in such a rush all the time? You know, there's something in your DNA that allows you to take risks that most people find unacceptable. And my hat's off to you. But that same DNA twist says everything needs to be done now. I gotta do it now! I gotta do it now! Here's a hint for you. Slow down. Put away the meth. Get into some heroin. Slow down. Slow down.
Every fire has the potential to be a killer.
I turned around and everything was orange.
It was just really coming down on us.
Nobody had any idea the amount of fire that would be coming up out of that hill.
I was under a wave of fire.
And I was just hoping that I could outrun it. It was sheer panic.
This one was so small, it didn't even appear fun. It was just basically going to be a little 2-hour chore and back to the work center. And it was a day much like today.
Timber Weller, a Florida firefighter, was in his work center when a call came in. Someone reported seeing flames in the woods near some homes.
It was really a pretty nondescript, low-activity fire. I reported to the dispatch center that I would, I could handle it without backup.
In Florida, it wasn't uncommon for a single tractor plow to be called in to control a small wildfire. Weller sized up what seemed to be a perfectly routine fire and began plowing a fire line.
I hadn't been operating the tractor perhaps 5 minutes on the fire when I noticed the flame length began to increase and the fire really started to kick up. That wasn't particularly unusual for a fire to flare up and drop back down, but this one never dropped back down.
Things began to go wrong, fast.
And within a matter of seconds, the sky above me had already turned orange. My first thought was, you can't do that. I mean, a little 2-foot flame in turkey oak fuel does not ignite the crowns of pine trees. It simply doesn't happen.
But it did happen. A downdraft had struck, driving the flames 50 feet high and towards Weller at an extremely high rate of speed. He turned his tractor and made a run for it.
The fire was moving so fast that almost as soon as I lifted the plow, the flames were already coming over the treetops above me.
When it became apparent that he couldn't outrun it, Weller looked for a clear spot to deploy his shelter, but he couldn't find one. His instincts then told him to run. His training, however, told him to stay put, that he'd be running right into the hot zone. Instead, Timber huddled into his cab, covered his face, and did the one thing that saved his life.
I took a deep breath as the fire was getting ready to hit me, and because the fire was moving so fast, I was able to hold that breath long enough that the superheated gases had mostly passed by the time I inhaled again.
Doctors gave him no chance to live. 13 surgeries later, he did survive.
When someone's burned to the degree that I was, the 70%, they generally lose their ears, their nose, their eyebrows, you know, fingers, arms. I mean, I really didn't lose that much. I mean, a lot of skin, but none of the digits or appendages or anything like that. So for the amount of injury that I sustained, actually, I came out of it pretty well.
Even the most routine fire can go horribly wrong. Accidents can happen at any moment. Firefighters have a job to do, but that doesn't mean they have to endanger their lives recklessly. Everyone has to take responsibility for his or her own safety and accept that fire is dynamic and can kill in a heartbeat.
Overcome the idea that it can't happen to you. You have to believe that it can't happen to you in order to get up and go to work every morning. But you also have to make a rational decision to accept that it may. It's happened to other people. It happens almost every year. People get burned over or killed. So again, it's an inherently dangerous business. If you keep fighting fire long enough, you're going to get into a sticky situation eventually. So convince yourself that it can happen to you and then train from that perspective.
Because Weller attempted to contain the fire alone, he was unable to employ some of the fundamental safety rules of LCES. A lookout watches for sudden changes in the weather or the fire's behavior. Maintaining clear, open communications is critical for alerting firefighters when changes occur. Pre-established escape routes provide a quick way out when things go wrong, and a reachable safety zone gives the firefighter a place to wait out the blaze. If Timber Weller had been able to implement LCES, the outcome may have been different. In Dowd's Landing in Northern California, a crew knew a fire was coming, had time to prepare, and it still went wrong. The crew was called to protect a house situated above a fire burning near the Stanislaus River.
I was exhilarated that we were going to be fighting some fire, and some good fire at that. I still didn't know what was going to be in store as far as the amount of fire.
The crew had mitigated the structure several days before. Now they held a meeting and set up a lookout and reconfirmed their escape routes and safety zone. Their game plan was to let the fire blow by while they protected the structure. What wasn't in the game plan was how fast and how much fire was coming. As the fire approached, their safety captain called out spots.
I could see the fire starting to build below us. I stood on the deck and called it off in about 1,000-foot increments as it came up.
At first it was one spot, and then it was 5 spots, and then the whole thing was on fire. It went from having a few seconds to spare to no time at all.
I was standing in the driveway next to the engine. I turned around and everything was orange and realized that we were now experiencing area ignition.
I didn't have time to be scared. There was just entirely too much to do.
It was burning my ears and my nose through my protective equipment.
And numerous spot fires everywhere. On the structure, in the litter around the structure, and the trees above the structure started to go. And then the spot fires, which pretty much closed off our escape route.
The crew had designated an escape route that ran down the driveway past a propane tank. Spot fires soon heated up the tank.
All of a sudden I hear this jet engine firing up. And I come towards the front of the house to find out what it is and realize it's the propane tank.
It sounded as though you were at the airport standing next to the jet. It was that loud.
The propane tank began venting its gas, shooting flames high into the air. Their escape route was blocked. Propane tanks are just one of many man-made hazards that complicate work in the interface and must be figured into safety decision-making. Electrical power lines might fall during a fire and also block escape routes, or ignite engines parked beneath them. Common residential materials like vinyl siding and tar roofing, and everyday chemicals such as pesticides, can generate highly toxic smoke if involved in a fire. These hazards can be found everywhere, behind the house, in sheds, fences, garages, even dog houses. And in crowded residential areas, the danger increases exponentially. The venting propane tank was only the beginning of the crew's problems. Their water supply ran out, used up trying to cool the propane tank. With their escape route blocked, the crew intended to take refuge in the engine, but they had parked it next to a flammable fence, and it caught fire.
If you've ever heard an engine burn, once the radios start going, the sirens start going, and it makes this god-awful sound, the poor animal is dying. To hear that thing crying its last breath and not being able to save it, that's probably something that I'll carry with me for a long time.
The crew maintained good communications between themselves, but outside communications became compromised due to the lack of common frequencies and overloading of the command frequency. Their options were running out fast.
It's more than just the engine being out of water. Now what are we going to do?
I explained it as like playing a game of cards, and I just kept dropping the cards out of my hand and couldn't pick them up.
I was starting to question my own safety.
The only option was to make the house their safety zone and defend it any way they could. In most cases, entering a vulnerable or burning structure is not a recommended interface tactic. However, not saving a home contradicts what most firefighters instinctually feel to be their duty. Most firefighters want to save every home, often causing them to take risks they shouldn't take. Sometimes you have to abandon someone's burning home. While it may be hard to do this, no home is worth jeopardizing your life to save it. In the case of Dowd's Landing, protecting a vulnerable home put the crew at risk. Ironically, the structure became their last-ditch safety zone.
Having a little trouble breathing, everybody was. But you can't take time out for that because there's other stuff going on. The structure's burning, you know, forget about breathing, go put the structure out.
Our only way of getting out was keeping that house standing. That was the only thing that was going to keep us alive.
With their water gone, they improvised ways to extinguish the spotting.
We were now throwing cases of Gatorade and water onto the roof to pour it on anything that was burning.
The deck is on fire, somebody run out and stomp it out. The roof is on fire, somebody go out and tear off a roof tile.
For 3 hours, the crew put out spot fires. They were lucky. All of them escaped without injuries.
The end result was the house still stands and the engine was gutted.
The crew had implemented LCES, but things still went wrong. Was it because firefighting in the interface is inherently more complicated? What could have been done differently to change the outcome?
You've probably been involved with dozens of these. There's a pileup somewhere on the highway. People are injured. Maybe some are trapped. Maybe worse. It's too soon to know. The adrenaline pumps and everyone is eager to get involved. It's a large part of why you joined the service in the first place. You've trained, you're ready, and you want to help. It's all very familiar. Problem is, it doesn't always wind up with a happy ending, with someone patting everybody on the back saying, "Good job." Because every year, highway incidents like this set the stage for a secondary incident, a nightmare in which some firefighter or police officer or EMS provider is suddenly struck and killed by traffic trying to maneuver around the accident scene. Instead of being a part of the solution, emergency service personnel suddenly are part of the problem and maybe a statistic. This is ordinarily the point where you begin to tune out. No problem, it can't happen here, it won't happen to me, we're careful, we do it right. Anyway, it's always the other guy. But consider this, for every other person in the world, you are the other guy. I know, you're still not convinced. So let me introduce you to a few folks who used to hold that same sense of being invincible until nonchalance turned into tragedy.
The story, as I've told it many times, involved a routine accident response on a rainy afternoon where there was a fairly significant downpour that came through the area, and as a result a car had spun off the turnpike going in the westbound lanes, and a passerby had called 911 and reported that there had been an accident on the Pennsylvania Turnpike just west of the Downingtown interchange.
Lady had, she had spun out in the water down over a ravine or in a little ditch, apparently broke her ankle. It was raining, so I didn't even get out of the truck. I sat in my truck, and there was a guy with me. He went over, verified the information, and then I radioed, giving the ambulance and stuff instructions what to do.
10 minutes after they arrived on the scene, there was some dialogue on the radio, communications back and forth between the assistant chief, telling the rescue truck to proceed in and assist the ambulance and EMS with loading the patient in the back of the ambulance.
As we were putting her in the back of the truck, the fire company was assisting us lifting the litter into the truck. Next thing I remember is hearing a tractor trailer, which I found out later, that was sliding across the traffic lanes of the turnpike.
I turned over my shoulder, and all I can remember is seeing a very large white truck coming at us.
I knew the truck was going to hit me, and I knew there was nothing I could do except try to get out of the driver's seat and get as far away as I could.
I yelled for everybody to get out of the way, and I went around the side of the ambulance to grab my partner that day, and I threw him out of the way. Next thing I remember is getting up off the ground and calling for help.
I heard over the radio the driver of the ambulance of EMS say that there was an accident and that he needed additional rescue and EMS personnel.
They knew that when I yelled across the radio that, you know, things went sour real quick, and they came from all ends of the county.
When I pulled up, I saw a tractor trailer on its side, and Assistant Chief Steve Sen's vehicle, personal vehicle, had been run over by the tractor trailer. Tire marks right over the driver's door.
It was total chaos. There were bodies laying all over. I saw guys laying there bleeding, guys just standing there stunned that were injured.
I mean, every firefighter that I knew was laying on the ground.
And it just registered that this is a lot more trouble than what I ever expected.
I remember looking up and I saw them doing CPR on Dave, and I asked who it was. And they said, "Good."
David died in the accident. Dave, Good.
Altogether, there were 8 firefighters and 2 EMTs involved in the Lionville incident. 1 fatality, 9 serious injuries, a wife was left a widow, the children were left without a father. And none of the people who knew and loved Dave Good will ever be quite the same again. And stories like that of Dave Good and the Lionville Fire Company are not as rare as we might believe. Nearly every year, 5 firefighters lose their lives in secondary highway incidents. 20 law enforcement officers suffer the same fate, and several EMTs are lost. That's an emergency responder life that is lost every other week on the highways, but outside the vehicle. And hundreds of others are injured. The situation has become so critical that James Joyce, the commissioner of the Chicago Fire Department, made the statement recently that firefighters responding to calls need to operate as if someone is trying to run them over. And it's not just firefighters who are responding. We've already mentioned emergency medical service personnel and law enforcement groups. But there are others who converge at the incident as well. Groups like transportation agencies, towing and recovery service providers, members of the media and other information service providers, sometimes coroners and medical examiners, as well as authorities and contractors focused on cleaning up and disposing of hazardous materials. When the call comes in, they all set out for a particular destination that's already been the site for an accident. Meanwhile, the traffic keeps on flowing, but now congested by limited passage, the gawking of the curious, and the rage of the impatient. That adds up to one very dangerous situation. Okay, secondary highway incidents pose a very real threat to everyone who responds. So the question becomes, what can we do about it? You don't have to be a Boy Scout to be guided by the 2 simple words, be prepared. With that in mind, we have put together an outline of preparedness we call the 10 cones of highway incident safety. Here's the first cone. There is no substitute for training. Training is at the core of everything we do successfully. There's no magic. You listen, you learn, you do. And the more you pick up from the experience, the more experienced you become. Earlier, we heard from Jack Sullivan. Jack is the Director of Training for the Emergency Responder Safety Institute and is known around the country for his work in identifying best practices in highway incident management. Jack conducts training seminars that focus on the considerations that are important in developing your own incident management procedures. It's a great resource, and it could save lives. If you want to be safe, abide by the first cone. There is no substitute for training. Now, the second cone. Multi-agency coordination and communication are a must. One way to look at any highway incident is that the orderly flow of life and traffic are disrupted, and it is the task of responders to administer, treat the injured, and then restore order as quickly and safely as possible. With so many responders converging at once, orchestration and coordination are critical. A unified incident command is essential. The details of such a command and corresponding SOPs should be developed jointly by all agencies and organizations that play a part in highway incidents. And once such a command and SOPs are established, ongoing communication, review, and refinement are indispensable. Coordination and communication are a must. The third cone. Limit your exposure. Limit your time. It may be obvious, but the more equipment and personnel you have responding, the greater the exposure to some secondary accident. Make sure you have the vehicles, equipment, apparatus, and crew you need. But keep those numbers to the necessary minimum. The same consideration applies to the time at the scene. The math is simple. Your exposure is greater in 4 hours than it would be in 2 hours. Work as quickly as is prudent and safe, and then clear up the crews as soon as possible. Limit your exposure. Limit your time. Fourth cone. Give traffic plenty of warning. In a perfect world, all traffic could be diverted until some incident has been cleared. Managing traffic would be easy if there just were no cars and trucks. In the real world, delays cause stress. Everybody's in a hurry, and tempers are quick to stir. 5 years ago, the phrase road rage wasn't ever known. Now, it's become a part of our daily vocabulary. Advance warning can help. You know the exercise: arrow boards, flares, cones, police cars, detours, and alternative routes, among others. Variable message signs, whether fixed or portable, have also proven to be effective devices to communicate traffic and incident information on nearly a real-time basis. The point is, use whatever means are available to give traffic plenty of warning. Okay, the fifth cone. Protect the scene with apparatus. You may not think of your vehicles or apparatus as a protective shield between you and the regular traffic flow, but it can be just that. It's always better to lose equipment than it is to lose lives. Properly positioned, the equipment offers tons of fortification around the response to a highway incident. You can safeguard the scene and safeguard the crew with just a little forethought about how the scene should be protected. For instance, you should always arrange the apparatus assuming that it's going to be struck. That means the equipment should be parked at an angle and with front wheels turned in such a way that any subsequent collision is less likely to impact the responders to the initial incident. Help create a safer zone of response and protect the scene with apparatus. The sixth cone. Always work away from the traffic. This cone is little more than an echo of what you heard so often when you were a kid. Don't play in the traffic. In all fairness, no one is playing when they respond to a highway incident, but sometimes the focus is so great on saving others that we fail to safeguard ourselves. The conversations, the discussions, the evaluations, they can all generally be done much more safely away from the traffic. Think about where you are. Don't be a target, and special attention must be given to your proximity to the traffic flow before you hop out of a vehicle or off the apparatus. After all, you've responded to help, but you'll be helping no one if you are the victim in a secondary incident. Always work away from the traffic. The seventh cone. Be prepared to shut down the roadway. This is a cone that is rarely popular with law enforcement or the public at large, but it has to be held as an option. Closing a roadway clearly eliminates the possibility of a secondary incident, but there are downsides that have to be considered. For instance, closing a road could cause a domino effect in which other highways are forced to take on dangerous volumes of traffic. Then there is the concern about detours taking the flow of cars and trucks through residential areas, areas of low bridges, or past schools, or by hospitals, where the potential threat may be greater than the inconvenience at the location of the initial incident. With that in mind, many communities around the country have pre-planned and marked well-scouted detour routes as contingencies for just such occurrences. Anticipate the possibilities and be prepared to shut down the roadway. The eighth cone. Be seen and not hurt. There used to be a presumption that the more lights, the better. But we've all become a bit more enlightened than that over time. There's evidence that a spectacle of flashing multicolored lights can be blinding to safe drivers and a deadly attraction to those impaired by drugs, alcohol, or sleepiness. Another problem inherent in an abundance of brightly flashing lights is that it tends to emphasize the location of apparatus and might obscure the presence of emergency responders. The recommended alternative is to reduce the amount of emergency lights with greater prominence given to the use of signboards, arrow boards, arrow sticks, and reflective markings on all apparatus. Two other suggestions. If possible, provide illumination for the entire incident scene and recognize that the presence of police vehicles tends to slow down traffic effectively. Clearly, we all have the same goal, and that is that you be seen and not hurt. That leads very naturally to the ninth cone. Dress for the occasion. You should never be forced to choose among protective, reflective, or comfortable clothing. If your structural gear doesn't offer high visibility, then get reflective and fluorescent vests. Just as important than getting the right gear is wearing the right gear. No excuses, and don't forget to thank the officers that make you wear them. The only thing they're guilty of is wanting to keep you alive. The eighth and ninth cone go hand in hand. Be seen and not hurt, and always dress for the occasion. The 10th cone is the enforcer for all the other 9. Accountability matters. It's all about responsibility. As long as each person takes the safety of the entire organization seriously, there's a real chance that secondary incidents can be eliminated. Take care of yourself, look out for others, keep your eyes open, and don't do anything dangerous. Consider assigning one individual the role of safety officer to monitor every highway scene. Someone explicitly responsible for properly staged and managed scenes. Someone who serves as the eyes and ears and enforcer of proper highway incident management. These are the 10 cones of highway incident safety. 10 cones that can make a difference in preventing injuries and saving lives.
I don't think a day goes by where I don't read a story somewhere across the country that a fireman, a cop, EMT, somebody just standing on the side of the road gets hit by a vehicle.
We lost a lot of firefighters because of this accident. And it certainly did hurt the fire company. And it scarred all of us for life.
I have a picture of my 2 boys hanging by my gear now in the company I run with now. And every time I grab my gear on and I make sure I touch their picture one more time.
It changed our lives. You know, in some points it ruined our lives.
Watch your back, guys. They're there to hit you. Just watch your backs. Watch each other. Don't let it happen to you.
Hey, listen, I got a fire. I'm trying to put it out with a fire extinguisher, but the smoke is
What is on fire?
I don't know. It's in my back office.
Okay, I've got some help on the way.
2214 East Washington. Hurry.
What you need to do is get out of the structure.
There's a lot of smoke in here right now.
You need to get out of the structure. We're on the way.
Okay. Rescue 16 to alarm.
Rescue 16.
On the scene of a large warehouse, we have a working fire. Just balance this out to a first alarm. Passing command to the next arriving engine.
Copy, you're on scene of a large warehouse working fire. You want to balance to the first alarm. You're passing command to the next arriving unit.
Coming over the bridge there, 20th Street, once we get down to Jefferson there, we noticed there was smoke showing. As soon as we pulled down right into Jefferson, you can see it started to vent itself. Right away I said, it's going. I told Angie it's going. We're going to need to call for some help. I said, Rescue 16's on the scene, so I pulled up. Told them we have a large warehouse, we have a working fire. Give me the balance of a first alarm. I passed command to the next arriving engine company, which was 11.
Rescue level, you guys take a plug for us. Engine level on the scene, we're going to go ahead and assume command. We do have a large well right here.
Was that engine 16 assuming command?
We're going to take it in with a 2-inch. Engine 11 will assume command.
Copy, engine 11 assuming command.
Engine 11 will be southside accountability.
The initial report came in and we had a 2-in-1 assignment to structure fire. We pulled out of the station. We didn't see any smoke right away. We turned south on 24th Street. I'm on engine 11. We were running in with engine 16 and rescue 16. As we turned south on 24th Street, we looked over here and saw a pretty black column of smoke. I turned and told my crew that we were going to have a working fire. We're probably going to take in a big line. At that time, Rescue 16 reporter on the scene. They said that they do have heavy smoke conditions, and they balanced it out to a first alarm.
On the scene, Larry gave his report. We had an obvious working fire, venting through the roof. Engine 11 pulled up, and Captain Major asked us to assist his crew in getting inside and helping them with the knockdown.
I took command from them. There was no real assignments that they made. We went ahead, I gave the report that we were going to go ahead and lay in. I told my crew to take a 2-inch line in. At that time, ladder 11 came in behind us. I told ladder 11 to go to the west side of the building. Kachina Boats is over there. I knew they had a high dollar loss if it was going to go extremely defensive, to go ahead and set up the ladder pipe. I went in with Rescue 16, my crew, and also Rescue 11. We made basically a 2-prong attack with 2 lines, one directly to the west and one cutting off the building halfway and then also to the west.
Ladder 11 from the scene, give me a par. What do you want, Gary? Have a par. Go ahead and set up for a defensive position, please. Defensive spot. Command ladder 11. Ladder 11. And a set up on the west side of this building, please. West side, got you.
Go to the west and put up the stick. Protect the west exposure. We had a boat company over here, Kachina Boat Company. So we had to force entry in there, had some boats in the way. We had to get the gate unlocked, pull the gate back, and actually hand move some boats out of the way to get the ladder in off the road so we could put the stick Right up. away, I got with command, which was Gary on engine 11. I told him, we're here, what do you need us to do for you? He said, back my crew up. We grabbed the tools that we have on our rig. We backed up the crew. As soon as we matched up and went in, we backed up their crew and found heavy smoke, heavy fire conditions. Our major concern was the exposure on the west side. It was a Kachina boat. We had quite a few boats along the edge. We had some molding over there. I guess it's fiberglass molds up against the building that was burning. So we want to get a line on that before we get it. We used a metal blade saw and cut this chain link fence in two so we could take extend a 2.5 over there with a gated Y. We did a horizontal standpipe. Ran one line in to protect the building and the boats, and then I went back and got a second high-rise pack, hooked onto it, and I grabbed the gentleman there at the boat company, civilians, and had them operate a line for a while on their own boats, just to protect their boats, until we got some more firefighters on the
Engine 16 is east. 16. Come on in, pump my line, and then we'll go ahead and ladder 11.
My assignment to engine 16 was go ahead and pump my line and see if they can maybe help ladder 11 get ready to set up the ladder pipe, and then we'll go ahead and pump ladder 11.
That's a clear line and getting bridge traffic. That's a grid, units responding. We do have power lines on the west side of this building. Also, we have a hazardous exposure inside, please.
All units be advised, there are power lines on the west side of the building and hazardous exposures inside the building.
Traffic because of the report to me of hazardous chemicals and also electrical lines possibly down the back side of the building, which I knew possibly ladder 11 was heading in that direction.
Gary, you want to come in? Where do you go? Gary, you're on the interior now. Put a guy right crew right now. Okay, I'll assume command. You go ahead and take interior. Ladder 1 responding.
Ladder 1 responding. Alarm copies command. Battalion 1 is in command. Washington Command, we have Hazmat 4 and Engine 4 responding. Do you need any other units?
Yeah, let's go ahead and put in second alarm on this.
Copy, second alarm.
What I got on the way in was that they were on the scene that they had heavy fire in a warehouse type structure, that they were laying a line in. Gary had set it up for me originally on engine 11. He had set it up real good for me as a good base for me to start from when I took command from him. When I pulled up, he was ready to go to the interior, and I assigned him interior, and he went on inside. He had pumped water already. He had ladder pipes already getting set up, and with the thought of going defensive on this thing because of the fire load that he had had in it.
As we got inside the building, we had heavy explosions, one right after another. We thought they might be cars in there, that their tires exploding. We then got another report that that's where the fire was coming from, was most of where the explosions were also coming from. I couldn't tell what they really were. The fire started to really heat up. We went to a semi-fog pattern to kind of keep the heat off our backs. I looked up, we had heavy fire rolling over our heads. We kept trying to advance. It looked like there was a grease pit back there. It wasn't, it was just fire was all the way from the ground about to the ceiling rolling over our heads.
So okay, we suited up, we went in there, and went to work, and while we were in there, try to get this door open so we can have better visibility. And we accomplished that, but we still had, heavy fire conditions every smoke.
I truly believe after we opened up the big double doors, Rescue 16 opened up the big overhead door, between the oxygen that was being fed in that way and us pushing a lot of oxygen with our semi-fog pattern, that probably accelerated the fire to a certain degree.
Engine 8 west. Command Engine 8. Engine 8. Flare supply line to ladder 11 here on the west side. Copy 8, land on supply line, ladder 11.
We kept trying to advance. At that time, I still had command. Battalion 1 arrived on the scene, and he took command from me. We were still trying to push into the fire. At that time, Engine 16's crew met up with us. I told Bob that I thought, right before Bob Gomez off of 16, I discussed it with him. I said, I'm going to make the decision to go ahead and abandon the building.
We had heavy fire coming out of that west end. We had the roof coming in on that west end, and the bond beam, which is the top course on that, it's a masonry building, the bond beam did crack to the east of where the crews had gone in. So I was afraid we were going to start losing that roof to the east of them also, and that would have made the entire roof collapse down there, and the stability of the walls was starting to become suspect also. So it was time to go defensive on it and go ahead and come on out and...
Command. Okay, we got to abandon and go defensive on this thing. Stand by for a second. Command, alarm, emergency traffic. All units on the fire ground, all units on the fire ground. Abandon the building, we're going to go defensive.
All units on the fire ground, abandon the building. You are going defensive.
Once he got to the interior, he became involved with the tasks on the inside. He was fighting fire, some heavy fire on the inside. And I was starting to get some bad reports. We could see things happening to the building on the outside that the interior couldn't see. He initially gave me a report that he was going to abandon the building because of the fire inside, and they weren't making any headway on it. Just about that time, he figured he was making a little headway, but he couldn't see the outside.
Shortly after I made a decision to abandon the building, we had a partial roof collapse. If you pan right inside that double door, that's what collapsed. That's basically where we were at. We pulled back. We didn't think it was going to collapse anymore, but as I got out, they made the statement that this wall was starting to bow also.
I went to emergency traffic, tried to get everybody outside of the building, and was not getting any response from the crews on the interior. I was afraid at that time. I had Engine 11, Engine 16, Rescue 11, and Rescue 16 operating on the interior of that building. I had contact with none of them. So at that point, I figured I had lost 12 people, or at least lost contact with them. That's when I started the RIC teams going in.
Washington Command Line, we will be operating defensive mode.
Copy, you will be operating defensive mode.
Command interior, give me a par. Command to Engine 11, interior. Command to Engine 11, interior. Command to 16. Command, go ahead. You want to sit in the water, you can speak, you want to hold on. Okay, until we get a report from interior Engine 11, don't start the water yet. Command to interior Engine 11. Command to Engine 16. Command to Engine 8. Engine 8. Charlie, I'm going to make you Rick. We have live contact with Engine 11. We're going to need somebody to go inside and try to find them. Copy. Engine Rick. Let's get to Engine 11.
I was third engine in. I was asked to lay supply line to the ladder pipe, ladder 11, and then I was assigned as a RIC team. It can be a pretty boring position. You end up standing around watching everybody else work normally, but in this instance, he couldn't account for some crews, so we were assigned as a rapid intervention crew right away to go inside and find the teams that he couldn't get a hold of.
The RIC teams, the They saw the roll right away. They knew what they were doing. I had tried numerous times to get in touch with the interior crews, and I wasn't getting no reply. So I had assumed, naturally I had to assume that somebody was down on the inside, so we went ahead and assigned the RICs, and they were going on the way in at the time that they did make contact with them, and everybody did get out.
We were in the building probably anywhere between 7 to 9 minutes, and that's when the roof did collapse. It collapsed right after I gave the command to go ahead and abandon. So I might have been a foreteller of fortunes at that time. Also, at the time of the collapse, there was emergency traffic that was given by command to abandon the building. They were unable to get a hold of us. I tried to get my crew together, making sure that we had a par, and there was some confusion where there was a RIC crew that didn't come in, and I was happy to see the RIC crew due to the fact that we were kind of in a very untenable position to pull everybody out with just me alone.
When I got here, the building was in the process of collapsing. The roof was collapsing. Major concerns were the people, I believe it was engine 16 and engine 11. They were the first crews on the scene. We were concerned about whether they had a par or not, and that was our first objective, is to make sure they were out of the building before we proceeded any further.
Yeah, there was concern for the crews inside. He didn't get any contact from them, so I was assigned to go in and get pars from the crews inside. There was 2 engines and a rescue inside. That's 10 people. So he hadn't got pars for them and hadn't got any radio contact, so we were assigned to go in and get pars and get them out of the building.
And how'd that go? Pretty smooth?
Fine, fine. It just took a couple minutes. They were close enough to the front door where we could still see them inside, but we couldn't account for every head, so we had to get them all out.
Command. Be advised, we have a par on engine 11 and engine 16. Okay, we have rescue 16, rescue 11 also. Rescue 11, rescue 16, stand by. Par on rescue 11. Ladder 4 to command. Command. And rescue 16 are out accounted for. Okay, we have a par on all units that were on the interior. That's affirmative. They came out on the south side. Okay, command alarm. We do have a par on the fire ground. We're going to start defensive operations at this time. Let's go, ladder 11.
Yes, I come over here and met with the captain on engine 8, Charlie Dote, and he was the RIC team on site, and confirmed with him where they were. They weren't out at that time. We waited a few seconds, did a couple of looks, and they were exiting the building at that time, and we did have a par of 16, 11, and both rescues that went in with them.
Yeah, after a while, once we were in there, we had another engine crew come in and actually advised us, that we needed to pull back and go defensive. And it was tough to do because, it felt like we had a handle on it, but, I guess it was just going to the point where the roof was going to come down and they didn't want to take any chances.
Let people behind me letting me know that we needed to get out, and I needed to let Gary, Major in front of me, let them know that we needed to get out because the building was going to come down. It was starting to collapse. The roof was kind of caving in, and that was it. We pulled out and started pulling the hand lines out.
At the point when I was sending them people in, the building was iffy. It was a marginal point right there. And what we were doing was just putting 8 more people in jeopardy, because I did assign 2 companies as a RIC to go in to try to find 12 people. Probably within 2 minutes. They started locating people, bringing them out, and once we got the word from the RIC teams inside that they were abandoning the building, finally that they did get that notification, they started coming out and started giving me pars. The only ones that we finally had to get a par from were Rescue 11 and Rescue 16, who went on another door. And that's another thing that the interior crews have to realize when they're assigned to a sector. They have to go in and come out at the same place, because that's just another way that we're going to lose crews on the fire scene. When we have to commit people to the inside to look for them, and they're already outside. The system reacted real well. The crews that I had signed to RIC knew their functions, knew their jobs, ready to go. They jumped right to it. They went right to the door. They were ready to go inside. They had lines. They were ready to go in and start pulling people out. Yes. Once they told me that they were starting to come out, and they did, everybody was accounted for, then we went ahead and got the ladder pipe started and put the fire out. That's basically what happened with it.
Now, after the building collapsed, were there still people going inside? Was that a hard thing to manage, just keeping them out of there?
Negative. They stayed out. We went defensive. Command indicated as soon as we got a par, he went defensive. He did a emergency traffic. We went defensive and started the pipes. The pipes did not start operating until we got a full par on the exterior of the building. They got out of the building when they needed to. They tried to make an aggressive interior attack and found that they couldn't do so. It was too much involvement with what little time and water they had at the time. And I think they all assembled and got a par real quick, and I think they got a good defensive knockdown.
Yeah, once they got set up and they pulled out the interior, we got the go-ahead and put up the stick. It was a pretty good stop. As much fire was going when we got here. There was a lot of fire. The wind was a big factor. It was blowing pretty heavy coming out of the west. So
did that affect your master stream?
Yeah, we definitely did. It took a while to get a good stream up there. We lowered the stick a little bit because it's just breaking up so much, so we had to get lower.
You're using a fog nozzle?
Yes.
But you were close enough where that really wasn't a factor?
It wasn't a factor. We did lower the stick a little bit. Initially, it was a little bit on the high side, and we just lowered the stick in, where it was very good and effective then.
Yeah, the ladder pipes, ladder 11 was already, had water to it, up and ready to go. We just wanted to make sure we had everybody accounted for before we started any ladder pipes in operation. The entire structure, I was not going to have ladder pipes working up on top with that roof coming in, that bomb beam looking the way it was. I wasn't going to start having walls coming in inside of there and anybody on the inside. Once the fire was knocked down and we were able to get back inside, do the overhaul, get the loss control started, cover up his engines and stuff like that he had. The real important stuff that he had conveyed to us, it was important. We went ahead and got all that stuff covered up, and we kept the loss minimal for that. For defensive fire, they did a real good job as far as stopping it.
And we checked on the interior with a couple of myself and a couple of other captains went in to assure that we could go on the interior and do a knockdown. Most of the fire was put out by the ladder pipes.
No, just backed up and assisted and went inside. Did lost a stop in there, helped cover up some machinery. We got quite a bit of machinery on the east side of the building, and we covered up with plastic.
The thing that the lessons learned on this thing was that when assigned a sector, we have to separate ourselves from the task portion of that and watch the sector. Watch the sector and keep in constant radio contact with command.
To all units on the fire ground, get that firefighter out of that window on the west side till we get a decent ladder up there. All units on the field, Taylor Street, we need to get this. the building. Evacuate the building and give command to respective part.
One firefighter's down a tackle line, he'll have a backup on that. And then you'll have two other firefighters come around with a backup attack line.
Look at that! Help!
Okay, see how the firefighters get down low? That's how we gotta get down low. Get in and down.
Tape of you guys on